Hi, my name is Pablo Zabaleta and I welcome you to this video where we will be covering Chapter 2, Operations Strategies of the Heizer and Render book. The outline for this video is as follows. First, we will be covering what is the operations manager's role, what is a strategy, what are the competitive strategies that we can use, what are the strategic approaches, how to perform a strategic analysis, some basic definitions regarding operations management, what are the 10 most common operations management decisions, and we will continue with successful companies' characteristics so that we can identify the best practices that we should be striving for. How do we organize production? What is technology and how do we use it? What is social responsibility, a product's definition, product life cycle, and the life cycle and strategy relationship. So, as you can see, we have a lot to cover. Let's start directly with the operations manager's role. He or she must know what needs to be done in order to create the product or services. How is this going to be done? How are we going to allocate the resources, both human, whatever, and who is responsible? If you check out these questions, essentially we're talking about programming and controlling production. And this is impossible to do if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't plan. Now, in order to plan, you need to understand deeply what is the strategy. What competitive strategies do we have available at our fingertips? And what are the strategic approaches? And how to perform strategic analysis? So far you have seen in several different contexts, how to do these things. Now we shall delve deeper from a practical point of view. So first, what is strategy? There are a lot of definitions out there, but in our case we will be talking about not taking a step without it being able to take us to our result. This is a set of actions that we must perform so as to achieve the objectives that we have set. And there are three competitive strategies generally recognized: costs, time, and differentiation. Usually we will be competing with one of these three, sometimes two. It will be very, very hard if you try to compete with all three competitive strategies at the same time. Why? Because their requirements are quite different from one another. What you need to do when you're competing in costs, it's not the same as when you're competing with differentiation. Ferrari does not compete, for example, with Tata from India. So, when we're talking about costs, competing with costs, we're talking about being able to produce at the lowest possible cost. But this doesn't imply a low value or a poor quality. That's not so. We mustn't ever compromise quality. When we're talking about competing with time, that means a fast response to the market's demands or specifications. And when we're talking about differentiation, we're talking about something that goes beyond the physical characteristics, that allows us to change the value that is perceived by our customers. They perceive that they are getting more out of our product or service. Now, what are the strategic approaches that we have available? Well, if we start by creating a graph, in one axis we have quantity and in the other one we have variety. The first strategic approach is when we have process focus. We have very low quantity and very high variety. For example, hospitals, because human beings are not made all to the same size. Every case is different, so we have to treat them individually. But what happens on the other hand, if we have very low variety and a lot of quantity, for example, beer production, refreshments, steel, crystal, glass, all those are products where we concentrate on the product. The machinery is very specialized in order to treat high volumes, a lot of quantity, but very, very small variety of the product. If we are producing beer, it's very hard for us to change from beer to, for example, sodas. The machinery is not so flexible. In order to achieve the required savings that come from large quantities, the machinery is very, very specialized. We have in the middle, let's say middle quantity, middle variety, the repetitive strategic approach. That's what we use to produce cars and motorcycles. And in certain cases, we have mass customization. High quantity, high variety. For example, Dell Computer managed it, and it gave them huge rewards. But it's hard to do that. You really have to create your supply chain and your transformation processes so as to be able to deliver. Our lesson will continue in the next video.